Hello, I am Dr. Venugopal, Head and Senior Consultant in Emergency Medicine in Ashram in Calicut. Thank you for giving me for the opportunity to present a very interesting topic that's the physiologically difficult airway. We'll start with a case. A 25-year-old gentleman went to emergency department following acute dyspnea exacerbation for the last 3 years. He is continuously ill for the last 3 years. On arrival, his blood pressure is low, his heart rate is high, his respiratory rate is high, his oxygen saturation is only 48% in room air. And ED doctors did a focus examination which show a bilateral B lines and moderate RA-RV dilatation. They also did did an X-ray chest which shows that more bilateral infiltrates in the lung, and they plan for an patient is desaturating, plan for a rapid sequence intubation. They did a quick airway assessment with the Lemon score shows easy airway, but really I want the question is, do you think this case is going to be an easy airway? In this background, an airway management in a critically ill patient, which involve the identification and management of a potentially difficult airway, is in order to avoid an untoward complication. But the focus of difficult airway management has traditionally referred to identifying the anatomical characteristics of the patient that make either visualizing the glottic opening or management of a tracheal tube passing through the vocal cord is difficult. But the physiologically difficult airway, in which that physiological derangements of the patient, which increases the risk of cardiovascular collapse from an airway management, which is poorly discussed or less discussed. But like in every emergency physician should account for a physiological derangement with airway management in a critically ill patient, regardless the predicted anatomic difficulty of the intubation. So, so see, like the overall incidence of surgical airway following in an anatomically difficult airway is only 0.5%. But the incidence of hypoxemia is 19%, hypotension is 25%, and incidence of cardiac arrest following in a physiologically compromised airway is up to 11%. But definitely a success with the first intubation will reduce this complication. Very interestingly, you see that 20% of this kind of physiological derangement, which is amenable for optimization. So our focus is in this 20%, and this really bring the concept of physiologically difficult airway. So what are the physiologically difficult airway that you know? Usually there are the four physiological derangement you have to address in this scenario. One is hypoxemia, two hypotension, three right ventricular failure, three is severe metabolic acidosis. Definitely one more you can add is patients with a raised ICP. So, how do you assess airway conventionally? Usually, you assess airway by Lemon's method, that is, look externally, evaluate T3 room, Alambati, obstruction, leg mobility, etc. Recently, the add S also along with the Lemons become Lemons. Lemons is S for the saturation, which is an early attempt to add a physiological variant. And also another way is assessing airway is Evans. And Evans added two more things, that's hypoxemia and blood loss, two more physiological parameters along with anatomical parameters. But recently, ASAPs bring about a mnemonic, that is crash. Crash for physiologically difficult airway. In crash include consumption, oxygen consumption. There's a consumption increase, that is for C, right ventricular failure or right ventricular function, acidosis, saturation, and hypotension and volume. So we'll look into each one separately. The consumption means like there are certain kind of group of patients like pediatrics, patients with sepsis, serious sepsis, patients with ARDS, excite, excited delirium, thyrotoxic pregnancy, all these kind of people are exhibit a normal saturation during pre-oxygenation, but there is an increased oxygen consumption, which may oxygen consumption, which may result in rapid deterioration during induction. Definitely, a short apneic period and maintaining adequate oxygen delivery help us to overcome this kind of situation. But any decrease in the oxygen delivery during the induction process will end up in a disastrous situation and decompensation. So, meticulous pre-oxygenation and improving cardiac output and correcting anemia may preserve that adequate oxygen delivery during induction period. So next one is the right ventricular failure. Right ventricular, like as far as the right ventricle is concerned, which has a limited ability to increase contractility and output in response to increased demand. Also, an RV dilatation and a tricuspid regurgitation occurs quickly when is further increase the RV afterload, and this may further worsen while you are administering a fluid to attempt a preload, and a rapid sequence intubation and paralysis, which leads to hypercapnia, atelectasis, and hypoxemia. All the three independently increase pulmonary vascular resistance and right ventricular afterload, often to a point of it may lead to a situation like cardiovascular collapse. So, even in a situation like a pulmonary embolism, where there is a death spiral, which will be aggravated while attempting a rapid sequence intubation. So what you want to do, like you should assess the cardiovascular function, particularly the right ventricular function, in the pre-intubation period as well. This will help you to decide the judicious fluid resuscitation. It will help you to decide appropriate vasoactive agents. It will also decide whether you should use an pulmonary dilator medication at the time of this thing, intubation. So next one is the metabolic acidosis. Severe metabolic acidosis, particularly in case with severe diabetic acidosis, severe sepsis, major trauma, salicylate poisoning, cecal ulcer condition, which will lead to the severe metabolic acidosis, where and here the risk increase. There is an increased risk because of any interruption of ventilation or inability to match the necessary compensatory minute ventilation, which will result in life-threatening acidosis. So, see, like a recent study shows that a 60-second apnea will lead to a drop in pH of 0.15 and an increase in the PaCO2 level about 12.5 millimeter of mercury, which can really devastating in a fragile patient. So, in a patients with a profound acidosis, what precautions you should take? You need to do a compensatory ventilation, which should be the best left intact, which is avoiding intubation sometimes. But if the patient require intubation, definitely you must use a strategy that limits or eliminate apnea period, and also you should address the minute ventilation requirement in the post-intubation periods. Saturation is one of the major component of one of the major issues which will cause a physiological derangement during rapid sequence intubation and airway manipulation. A failure to maintain adequate arterial oxygenation mainly due to a shunt or a ventilation perfusion mismatch. But in a critically ill patient, there are high risk for rapid desaturation, which is due to a low FRC, ventilation mismatch, or shunt. But all can acutely worsen. All these three can acutely worsen by our induction by RSI. So how can you overcome this situation? You can do a proper pre-oxygenation or a denitrogenation. It's essential to ensure maximal safe apnea time by providing reservoir for oxygen to drawn upon. So the best, it can be best performed with various methods, like by using a tight fitting mask and flat oxygen flush, using a bag wall mask of for the 50-liter flow. That is, you can also use an upright position. Sometimes patient is require an airway, alveolar recruitment. You can use CPAP for pre-oxygenation. Sometimes patient is not tolerating CPAP. You may add a DSI, delayed sequence intubation, in this situation. Or if the patient is refractorily hypoxic, maybe rather than going for this, you can consider an awake intubation. Also is an option. This can be desired depending upon what category of patient, whether a patient is in moderate, low risk, moderate risk, or patient with a high risk. You can decide accordingly. So if you want to know like the endpoint for pre-oxidation, there are two methods. So you can do objectively assess. One is the end tidal oxygen concentration. If it is 90%, that means adequately pre-oxygenated, or the end tidal nitrogen concentration is 5%, that means adequately denitrogenated. So there are also the formula to decide how much your tolerable apneic time for each patient. So, if your patient is COVID-19, you can modulate and you can adjust the pre-oxygenation technique accordingly. Next one is the volume. The volume requirement in a critically ill patient requiring advanced airway management are significant risk of hypertension in peri-intubation period. And many critically ill patients can lead to a deleterious stage and precipitate cardiac arrest, cardiovascular collapse. The situations like a volume depleted patient, vasopathy patient, patient with a primary or morbid cardiomyopathy, patient with when you are using induction agents, even a cardiovascular stable induction agents like etomidate will precipitate a disastrous situation while attempting intubation in a volume depleted patient. So a transition to the positive pressure ventilation will amplify all these situations. So what you should do, like you should ensure that adequate fluid resuscitation, vasopressor use, and inotropes prior to intubation, which is depending upon the clinical scenario. And recently, Society for Airway Management put forward the guidelines or recommendations to optimize a physiologically difficult airway. There are 14 recommendations they place as well as in airway hypoxemia in in the area of hypoxemia alone, which include they insist that a maximal pre-oxygenation before intubation. Again, they insist you can use the pre-oxygenation either at 3 minute with 100% oxygen using a high flow oxygen at least for the 3 minutes, or 8 capacity breath. And if the patient's apneic oxygenation can be performed with the nasal cannula, standard nasal cannula, or high flow nasal oxygen kind of system. And if the patient is required and a recruiting process, definitely you can use a back valve system with a PPAP valve, which will enhance the pre-oxygenation process. And the patient with a significant physiological shunt or reduced FRC, where you must use PPAP or NIV system. And sometimes if the patient is in refractory severe hypoxemia, you can use a inhaled pulmonary vasodilators. Sometimes even you can go for awake intubation, and you must use an upright position for pre-oxygenation. A reverse ramp position will be helpful in those patient is not improving otherwise, or they are risk for aspiration. And a delayed sequence intubation is recommended those who are not tolerating for the CPAP system, and a DSI can be used if it is required. As far as hypotension is concerned, in the area of hypotension, they insist like the patient cardiovascular status, that the stroke index should be assessed. If it is more than 7, their hemodynamic, they are likely the candidate for cardiovascular collapse. So a fluid tolerant patient, you have to give adequate fluid before intubation. If they are not fluid tolerant, you have to use vasopressors before attempting intubation, RSI. And even you can use a bolus vasopressor can be used, where epinephrine can be a diluted epinephrine can be a choice, and always use a hemodynamically neutral agent for inductions. So as far as RV dysfunction is concerned, all patients should be screened for RV dysfunction in the pre-intubation period itself. And if the patients with RV dysfunction or a fluid requirement, fluid and vasopressor tolerance, use the fluid resuscitation should be used appropriately. And if the patients are not tolerant, use sometimes the patient is with the increased afterload, you can reduce that by using an inhaled intravenous vasodilator, so inhaled or intravenous pulmonary vasodilators, and a pre-intubation extracorporeal membrane oxygenation cannulation is indicated patient with RV failure. Then peri-intubation diuresis can be considered. Hypercapnia should be avoided. Mean arterial pressure should be maintained adequately. And also in the ventilation, while considering the ventilation, use a low mean airway pressure and high PEEP stats should be used. So some recommendation continuing for severe metabolic acidosis, where the patients with the severe metabolic acidosis are at risk for decompensation due to the volume depletion and inadequate alveolar ventilation after can go for deterioration after intubation. So such kind of patient, what you have to do, like a high minute ventilation requirement should be considered for awake intubation to maintain the spontaneous circulation, spontaneous respiration. And also you consider spontaneous breathing mode even after intubation. Then, as far as neurologically compromised or patient with raised ICP, always try to maintain eucapnia and also maintain always use a hemodynamically neutral induction agent for RSI, and do RSI in a 30-degree upright position. And also, while you are setting the ventilation, the PEEP level should be limited low in order to avoid that raised ICP. So finally, concluding this session, I have to bring about 10 you have seen several recommendations. Here I bring about the top 10 recommendation as far as to optimize physiologically difficult airway. This include like there are two categories. One is in recommendation, five top recommendation in hypoxemia optimization, which include pre-oxygenation should be using high flow oxygen for at least 3 minutes or 8 vital capacity breaths. Desaturation is the biggest risk factor for cardiopulmonary arrest. If the patient has significant shunt physiology or reduced functional residual capacity, like pregnancy, obesity, etc., a pre-oxygenation should be performed with the PEEP using non-invasive ventilation. Patient should be pre-oxygenated in upright position. A delayed sequence intubation is an option for patient who cannot tolerate pre-oxygenation with NIV or HFNC. And as far as hypotension is concerned, another strong recommendation. What is the risk factor for decompensation include vascular and cardiac effect of induction agents and effects of positive pressure ventilation, peri-intubation. Peri-intubation hypotension is independently associated with poor outcome, including mortality, length of stay, and end organ injuries. Patients should be screened for high-risk hemodynamic collapse with induction and those with shock index of more than 7 with increased risk. A fluid responsive or fluid tolerant patient should be resuscitated appropriately before intubation, and when possible, when and whenever possible, a pressor infusion should be started before intubation in patients who are not volume responsive or fluid tolerant. So these are my references, and thank you for your patient listening.